Welcome to Grief is the New Normal. I'm Dr. Heather Taylor, a licensed psychologist and grief specialist, here to help change the conversation about grief and build community and connection while we all adjust to this new normal we are living in. This podcast is for you if you are grieving or if you are supporting someone in a season of grief. I'm glad you're here. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited for today's guest. Joining us, we have Chris Drew. She is a life and mental health coach all the way from Pennsylvania. Chris, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I am too. I always love geeking out about grief stuff, so this is great. Can you introduce yourself a little bit and share about your background and the work you do in grief support?
Yeah, my background is interesting. It's actually in graphic design.
Okay.
I'm a life and mental health coach. I work with people going through transitions, and there's so many kinds of transitions out there. But I started knowing about this because I had an aunt. I'm from Brazil. So I had an aunt who was a therapist and a pioneer in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And we learned a lot with her. And I'm always curious. She would help me. I would ask questions. So then I was here working in marketing and in graphic design. Had kids, decided to be a stay-at-home mom because of the situation at the moment. Ended up volunteering a lot. And through my volunteering, especially through school, I would write like the communication talk to people, and they would ask me, "Are you a therapist? You're so good at this." Once I started coming to a stage in my life where I felt stuck, kind of lost with my purpose, the kids started growing. I had to find out a way to get me out of that situation. I started reading. I went back to the teachings, the things that I had learned from my aunt, and got myself out of there, found coaching later, loved it, and decided to work with helping people that were in the same situation, that being stuck without knowing how to get themselves moving forward. So that's how I became a life and mental health coach.
I love that. That stuck piece is so relatable too, because we can get stuck for a number of different things, like not just death losses, but non-death losses too. And it can show up later. So even thinking about with grief, like it doesn't show up right away. Sometimes it surfaces unexpectedly, even years later. How do you see that showing up in the work that you do, that delayed grief, and how it impacts people who may not have seen it coming?
That's very common. Especially as you said, Heather, there are different types of griefs, right? So sometimes the grief is out there. They know it's grief. Sometimes they don't even know what they're feeling. And the grief is from a move. The grief is from a stage in life. And somehow they feel that stuckness. And for my clients, I've seen it showing up as feeling stuck, as being too emotional, not knowing why. Or sometimes it's interesting. You can be irritated, have no patience, and you don't know why. So it's just so interesting how it shows up differently. And they cannot correlate it because the grief happened, the loss happened a while ago. So they're like, why am I so irritated with my kids right now? And that's when it shows up. So you have to dig a little deeper to try and find out. And I do want to say that sometimes one of the ways that we deal with grief is by distracting those emotions. So sometimes the person is stuck in a behavior that's not helpful for them. So that's when you know that there's something there. You want to exercise, but you can't. You're sleeping in late, or you're going out every night, or you're on your phone all the time.
Binge watching all the Netflix shows.
And you don't know why you can't get through that and get out.
Right. And I think sometimes those unexpected pieces, they have patterns to them too, certain seasons or times of the year. And it's like our bodies have these memories that our brains aren't connecting, that, oh, this is when my person got that terminal diagnosis, or Right. This is like the 2 year anniversary of when we moved, and I lost all of my like support community. And it just catches us off guard. And we're not sure where the emotions are coming from, where that lethargy, apathy is coming in. And it just makes it really hard to find momentum because it feels like we're trudging through molasses in a way. Like I know I used to be able to do these things. I can do them. What's the disconnect here? And often we want to pathologize it or give it any other label other than, oh, I'm grieving, because
Yeah.
people minimize grief in our society. They minimize the impact that it has on things. Yeah.
And there's that culture of, if you're grieving, you grieve and go through it and you're done. So
Right.
you don't linger in it. So every time you're stuck, and I love this analogy that you made, stuck in molasses. Yes, it's that stuckness. It's like you're lifting your legs. It's so hard and it's dragging you down, but you don't know what created it because society, in your mind, you think that you're already dealt with it and it's done. And that's not what happened last year. That's not what happened 5 years ago. And you think it's something else, and you think that it's something with you that means that you're different
Yeah.
or broken or that you need fixing or
Oh my gosh. Yes. Relate to so many of the things you just said. Grief doesn't have an end goal. Like, it doesn't end. It gets different. We learn to carry it in different ways. So we maybe feel less stuck in different seasons of grief, but those pains, those losses, we hold on to those stories, those peoples, those experiences. And it's learning how to carry it in a new way where it doesn't impact us to the point where we're so stuck. But you're right. Like, people think, I've hit all 5 stages, and there's no stages. Stages, those are for people who are actively dying, not for those left behind. Let's
so
clarify
true.
that.
Hmm.
And so it's going to make sense that stuff continues to come up and impact you because it doesn't really go away.
Yes, true. And then I love that you talk about stages, but because grief, as you said, grief has no stages. But not only that, it is like a circular thing. So we can come back and you think that maybe now I'm going to do grief differently moving forward. But then you go back to one of those stages and you're like, what is going on in my life? It's just because it is circular. Those
Yeah.
stages can come back and go and come back.
Yeah, I call them grief states because they're different emotional representations, but you're right, they cycle through like a tornado. And there's points where they're closer together and tighter and you're feeling them more rapidly. There's other bigger points of the tornado where it's like they're cycling through still, but they're more spread apart. They're not as acute, they're not as in your face. But you cycle through those grief states because the different emotions are going to pop up in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you in that. And emotion is such a big thing because grief is about the emotions.
Yeah,
Right?
totally. So, speaking of that, one of the biggest challenges in grief is processing emotions. And when many people feel stuck, they don't know how to get through it. What do you think are some of those key barriers to processing grief and some approaches you like to use to help that?
Yeah, I love this topic about emotions because we tend to react to the emotions. And I love to go deep in the emotions and really help the people bloom and find a way out of those very intense emotions. it the problem that people don't actually go in there is because when you're not taught how to handle emotions, you, in a way, first you might want to distract yourself not to feel it. And if you're going to take a moment and look at the emotion that's coming up, you get really afraid of going in there because there's that sense of, if I go in there, I'm never going to get out.
Yes.
Right? The emotions are going to consume me, and I'm going to drown in those emotions. So I see that as like a barrier for people to actually start to even process emotion and understand what's going on. But processing emotions is, I'll say, it's not easy, but it can get easier once we practice. Because everything gets easier
Totally.
with practice. The processing emotion, I usually start with my clients. It's acknowledging, being aware that there is that emotion, that grief in there. That's the first step. It's not you going through a wall that, it is, hey, there is something here that you need to address. And then after that is letting them know that the emotion itself, it doesn't last. So I remember, may I tell a story
Yes.
about,
Oh my gosh. Please tell stories. Love stories.
I had a huge trauma in my life with a boyfriend that I had for a long time, 7 years. And at the end, we broke up. He was cheating on me and all of that. But anyway, that was huge, enormous. And I remember the feeling every time I would wake up, it would hit me like a baseball bat. And I would be like trying to catch my breath. And I was like, I'm going to die. I can't do this. And one of the things that my mom told me is, look, nobody dies of a broken heart. This is going to get better. And I'm thinking, but I want to die. This hurts so much. But the idea is, it doesn't kill you. I know that it affects because of the chemicals and the hormones in the body. But the idea is, it is huge. But if you're willing to go in there and you can have your support system, you can do that with a friend, with a family member, or with a professional. What you're doing is having somebody there to hold your hand so that you have that certainty that you're not going to drown, that you're going to go in and out. And then when you go out, it's such a relief. You feel so much lighter.
Yeah.
And I see that in my clients. So I think that is like the big start that gets everybody stuck. And then after that, you can learn to process those emotions however it feels comfortable for you. Some of my clients will do journaling. Others will go for arts. I have one that was doing paintings every time she wanted to think of her dad. Some of them will speak out loud. Some of them will listen to music and dance. Yeah, there are lots of ways to process the emotion, but that's just the willingness to go there. So when you experience, what do you think about that? What do you do?
Yeah, I think it's so unique to each client and to each loss. And so, one who lost a parent, they listened to 70s music to think about their parent, and that lets them have an emotional release. It helps them get unstuck. They're able to pick 2 or 3 songs that were their parents' favorite, and then they're able to move through it. I have other clients where when they are noticing they get stuck, they call their best friend and they're like, hey, I'm stuck. I need to go for a walk. I'll bring coffee. Can you meet me? Or they'll ask their friend, can you bring the coffee? Because I'm like really stuck and I can't make a pit stop. I think it's so different for each client because our emotions different. What's been modeled for us growing up is different. Some people want to bake or they go distract and play with their kids because they might have really little kids and so they can get lost in Bluey land or whatever's going on. So I think, it's unique to the person and the loss and their capacity too. I have a number of clients who are readers, and if the feelings are too big, they put an audiobook in instead of a visual, like a paper book, because they just can't focus on the words on the page. But reading helps them get distracted out of the feeling, or it makes it feel less like stuck to their face. And it's, oh, wait, I have other tools. I can go do the things that I normally do to help me get in my rhythm. Even if it's just, I get dressed, I put my shoes on, and I take the dog for a walk. But I can't even get there if my feelings are stuck to my face and I can't see through them. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Distraction is great because sometimes, as you said, I'm thinking of the clients with the little kids. Sometimes you have to take care of the little kids. It's not time for you can't afford to go to bed and cry on your pillow. So what do? The distraction is actually a technique to deal with it.
Totally.
You distract yourself so that you can do what you have to do in the moment, have a functioning life. And then when you do have time, then you can unpack those emotions and
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Totally. I tell my clients that all the time. Like, time is a resource. We only have so many spoons to spend for the day.
Yeah.
And if we need to fall apart, but we don't have enough spoons for it, it's going to take us so much more time to put ourselves back together. So it's okay, I'm going to distract myself or do something different until I have more capacity, more time to fall apart in the way that I need to. So is it hard to mask? Absolutely. Is that ideal? No. And not all of us, like you said, we have the privilege or the resources to go and be in bed or be a couch burrito. That life is really full and busy, and grief is really an inconvenient and show up in untimely moments where you're grocery shopping and it's this is not where I need to have a grief burst right now. I am melting down. I just needed to get the 3 things on my list, and then you can't even finish that and you have to leave the grocery store. Grief just, it shows up when it's going to show up, and we can't always predict that, which can be hard.
Yes, it is hard.
Yeah.
And that's when acknowledging it, I think, is a huge change. And we can then impact you differently.
Yeah.
Because then once you acknowledge it, it seems like I feel like the emotions are always trying to get through, right? Once you acknowledge, okay, this is grief, I'm here, I want to feel this, and my emotions are like boiling. So by acknowledging that, it's okay, you just turned off the stove and now it's there, the limit, but it's not boiling because it has been heard, it has been
It's
acknowledged.
like one of those old school tea kettles that you put on the stovetop and then it whistles really loud once it's too hot. And it's, I just want you to see me. I want you to acknowledge that I exist. I'm still here. And then it's, oh, and then you can turn it off and the sound goes down a bit. But yeah, that there's so much power in witnessing grief and holding space for grief and acknowledging grief in its many forms, those feelings, however they come up. I think that's such a great point.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Knowing what grief is about.
Yeah. You've experienced different types of loss yourself. How have you noticed grief showing up differently depending on the type of death or relationship? And are there patterns that you feel are more universal or differences that stand out? Again, just whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I have, because of the transitions, I've lived in different countries, different cities, transition, moved with my family, moved by myself. It is, those things are hard. And of course, phases in life also, right? After college, when you leave the house, that is one type of grief, but there's also the loss of the people that you love. Those are very intense emotions. So again, I've lost people in different ways. And there are emotions that come. Sometimes it's a little different. Like I lost a friend by suicide. So that was hard because you think that you did not do enough. And it's interesting that for me, I'm such a giver that I'm always like wondering, could I have done more?
Sure.
That's something I had to learn to deal with and know that's my like automatic response. But people that go suddenly, that's very shocking. That is very hard. And when people are sick for a while, then you're grieving even before they actually pass. So sometimes that's a little more manageable. But at the same time, it doesn't matter because grief is grief. The intense emotion is there. So I think that everybody will feel the pain, but when it's there, either there's no closure or it's like a quick accident or things like that, it's very intense and it can really catch us unprepared and really knock us down. That's what I see.
Yeah, grief is so hard, whether you have the time to say goodbye or whether it's a traumatic loss with no goodbyes. Both ends of that spectrum are so challenging. And grief is often talked about in terms of pain, right? And we're not really excited about pain in our society. We try to avoid pain. And so I guess when thinking about that, it's also important to think about what we learn and the transformational nature of grief. So I guess what are some of the biggest lessons or personal growth opportunities that you've seen emerge from grief?
Oh, yeah. I think that one of the things about learning, first, we don't see it right away, but I think that later you realize that the fact that you're grieving doesn't mean that person or those parts of your life that you're grieving, that they will completely disappear for you. I think that what you learn is that you carry them with you. It is yours to carry. The memories are always there. So that is something that I learned, is that my heart, it's not, oh, now that person is not here anymore. It's like my heart gets bigger, and, it's still there. And I continue to want to experience other people, other places, other life opportunities, because that just enriches me. And the other thing that I think that it's important is, when you're grieving and when you see that it doesn't go away, you learn to respect other people's emotions and the way that they are grieving too. You're not like the one to say, "I'll snap out of it." You're actually more, "Do you need anything? Can I do anything for you?" So one thing that I learned is, like, when there's like bereavement cards and all of that, that I send a person a card, I don't try to find the perfect wording, because there isn't one. So what I end up doing is saying, "Look, I know this is hard, and there is nothing that I can say. There's no words to convey what I feel and to even help you heal right now. But just saying that and knowing that it's not going to pass right away, but it's okay." I think that is also huge. And one of the things that I learned also, as I was the one grieving, I was the one with the loss, and people showed up for me. And people tend to think that they have to show up a certain way. And again, no, if you show up later, it's still showing up. If you show up and not say anything, it's still showing up. Sometimes the person who is grieving, they don't need flowers and for you to make them feel better, because people don't understand. You're not going to make them feel better. They need to do it on their own. So maybe all they need is a hand to hold while they cry, or a shoulder.
Exactly. There's not one perfect thing to say. There's not some magic phrase that's going to fix or rescue our people from this grief experience. So the best we can do is show up, be with them in it, offer food, offer support, whether we're comforting, whether we're listening, whether we're distracting. I think there's so many different roles we can fill to support each other while grieving, without having to say the perfect thing to negate the pain, because the pain's so real.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. If we can see ways to help, not help, as you said, take that pain away or fix the person, but help with the other things so that the person can have that moment. Helping with food is actually, it's a great idea, very helpful. Help with taking care of the kids, with house cleaning, or maybe a good friend or a family member can go and do their laundry even. That's, "Hey, don't worry about this. Today you can do whatever you want. You can watch TV, you can go to bed, you can go for a walk by yourself or with me, but I'll make sure that your house is working and functioning." That is so important. Those are really helpful. But there's one thing that happened to me when my dad passed away, which actually happened less than a year ago. Yeah. People tend to send cards as soon as they learn that somebody passed. It's great. It's, "Hey, I learned about your loss. I am so sorry." That's great. But I had two cards that showed up a little later. And for me, those meant so much. Because what happened is that the people that send the cards later, they were actually telling me, "A week has gone by, a month has gone by, but I know you're still grieving. I know you're still missing him. And I want to acknowledge that it's hard and that I feel for you." And that for me was like, somebody's here with me a month later. That was, and I'm going to get emotional now because that meant so much to me. Instead of everybody said, I'm so sorry in that first week, and that's it, it was done. Because it's not done for the person that's grieving. And people don't realize that.
So true. We're still grieving months later. We are still deep in our loss months later. And when we're getting those cards 8 months, a year, 5 years later, that people are still remembering our person, it reduces the responsibility that we're the only ones remembering them. That load that we're carrying as those left behind, getting those cards, those text messages, people remembering our person, saying their name, so valuable, so meaningful. And just again, it helps reduce the isolation that can happen when we're grieving, because it's lonely being in that space of loss while it feels like the rest of the world is moving by.
That for me was very meaningful. Instead of, it's done, we don't talk about it anymore, just let's move on.
Many grievers really struggle with well-meaning and unhelpful support from others. What would you say are some practical ways people can really support a grieving loved one in a way that feels meaningful and validating?
Yeah, if you want to support a loved one, you should definitely show up and let them tell you how they want to be supported. And do know that it's really hard for people to tell you what they need. Sometimes they don't know. Empathy is great, just thinking, okay, I know this person. I know how their life works. I know that they take their kids to school every day. I know that they go pick up the kids. Maybe you already go with, would it be helpful if I were to get your kids for you? I'm going to pick up my kid. I can pick up your kid. Would it be helpful if I were to take them to my house? Would it be helpful if I were to bring something for you? Say, and it doesn't have to be like every day, but would it be helpful if I were to, I'm going to make this casserole for myself. Would it be helpful if I were to bring you a lasagna casserole for yourself as well for Friday nights? Just like very specifically things that you know that they would find helpful, that it would take their, what do you say, the life responsibilities out of their day so that they have time to relax, grieve, and become stronger and heal. And I think that that's what you do instead of say, what can I do? Or I'm here for you. And that's great, because if that person is comfortable reaching out, they will. But if they're not, and if you see that they don't reach out, and when you call to check on them, say, would it be helpful for me to do this or this? And maybe they can choose one.
Yes, absolutely. I think giving that choice of this or that is so helpful because we already have so much decision fatigue when we're grieving.
Yeah, you're still overwhelmed just to have to think of something. And then maybe they feel bad even. It's, oh my gosh, so I wants to help and I can figure out a way for her to help because they're so overwhelmed. Absolutely. That is really helpful. People have no idea how helpful that is. And even if it's after those first couple weeks, when you do that again a little later, that checking in with them and saying, hey, I'm thinking that this. Now, what would you suggest then that would be helpful for people that are grieving not the loss of somebody, but another kind of grief, the loss of a job, or they have just become empty houses or empty nesters, or they had some other kind of transition. Even it could be stages of their lives even.
Oh, such a good question. I love talking about non-death type losses. I think it's just as valid a type of grief. These identity transitions, these changes, these parts of ourselves that have been so core to who we are, how we spend our time, the relationships that we have. And when we become empty nesters, when we retire, when we move to a new city for a job and a rebuilding community, like I think it can be so challenging figuring out how to navigate that new normal that I'm in, because I didn't experience a death. But I am mourning. I am grieving how my life used to be. I am figuring out how to adjust to this new space, this new way of being. And yes, there's some good things that can come from that. My kid launched to college and is doing well successfully. Like, I did my job as a parent there. That's fabulous. Or I retired. I spent my time. I did what I needed to do. And now I can enjoy this new season, this new chapter. And it can be incredibly overwhelming to embrace these changes without knowing what is it going to look like. There's so much ambiguity. And when our brains have ambiguity, it likes to fill in the void. And so sometimes we can end up catastrophizing these things that could be really positive for us. And they're different. And different doesn't mean bad. It just means we need to honor that, like, maybe we need some time to grieve how things were. Maybe we need some time to figure out our new rhythms and routines. And that gets to be okay. There's not shame there. We get to be curious about what feels good now, what's honoring to who we were, to these roles, to these identities, and then integrate that into the new normal now.
I totally agree. I see also people even suggesting that they do things differently or different things. Like, let's go for that yoga class in the afternoon now that you're not working anymore. Or even just doing the stuff that they used to do before, like in another period. So if you're missing the family ambience, how about we combine our two families and have like a Thanksgiving party or even an Easter dinner or something with that family feeling now that you're away from your family, or now that your kids are in college or something like that. I think that's so important, inviting themselves in. And yeah, I think that really helps those that are grieving, and especially the ones that don't know that they're grieving.
For someone who's currently in the thick of grief, feeling overwhelmed and unsure how to move forward, what's one or two things you'd want them to take away from this conversation?
I think that the most important thing is actually what you're doing. Grief is there, it's an emotion, totally normal. We have this programming from society since we were young that we have to grieve and be done with it. But grief can come, it's an emotion, it comes and goes, and it comes and goes, and it's totally normal to grieve. That's, for me, it's the main important thing. Take your space if you need it, take your time if you need it. See what works for you. Find your support system. If people are not ready, your support system doesn't know how to help, find somebody that does. Find a professional help. And know that professional help, you're also not going to become dependent on them for the rest of your life. You're just going to learn tools to deal with that and acknowledge grief and process the emotions. And then you're going to carry it way better.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking with a professional, it can also help if things start to get not great, where maybe there is more depression or anxiety or trauma reactions coming up because of how the loss has impacted the moving forward. And maybe you do want to talk about medication or supplements or things like that. And yes, we don't need to pathologize grief. However, left unsupported, it can turn into something that's a lot harder to manage on your own. And like you said, seeking out additional professional support, I think, is so helpful.
Yeah, I think that part of me being stuck in that situation and feeling myself deeper and deeper in that state where I could not move forward, in a way, is grief. Because I used to work outside the home, and then I became a stay-home mom, and then the kids started to become independent, and then my purpose started changing, and all those things, one on top of the other, got me in that stuck situation. So definitely, if I had not said, enough, let's find a way out, that could actually have led to depression.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Chris, this has been such a great conversation. Oh my goodness. I have just so enjoyed chatting with you. What's the best way for people to connect with you and your work? And do you have any projects or resources you'd like to share with listeners?
Oh, thank you for this opportunity. I love talking about this because grief is such a big emotion in our lives, and everybody feels it one way or another. And normalizing it is great for people to accept themselves as they are and become more authentic.
Yeah.
You can find me either through my website, it's christianedrew.com, or at my social media handles. And that's Christiane Drew Coaching, both on Facebook and Instagram. In those handles, there are some reels on grief because I did talk about it. Yes. And on my website, you can find blogs on grief. So I give tips on how to better manage it, how to talk about it. I even make suggestions on books for adults and kids to read to help with grief. And anyway, you can always contact me at my email, chris@christiandrew.com, and I'll be ready to answer any questions, help out, or I can even do a blog post about whatever subject you want me to talk
Oh,
about.
I love that. That's so great. Is there anything that you're hoping we would touch on today that we haven't touched on?
I think we did. I think we touched on everything. I think that a big one was how the support system can show up because a lot of people want to help and they don't know how.
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
Yeah.
And I'll say for the grievers out there, if you're listening to this and you have your support system who are not showing up very, I'll say, effectively for you and you're overwhelmed, you can just tell them, you know what? Give me 3 things that you can do for me, and I'll choose one. And maybe that way they will realize that they can actually come with options that would benefit you.
That's such, oh, I love that. That's so great. Like,
Right?
I'm overwhelmed. How about you tell me 3 things that you can do? That's so smart. Flipping the script.
I just thought of this now,
I
by the way. I'm like,
love that. Oh my gosh.
right? You're grieving, but you can be empowered, but just
Yes.
telling them, like, I don't want to think about this. How about you come up with 3 options and I'll pick one? And yeah,
That's perfect. I love that so much. Oh my goodness. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. You're all doing a great job. And remember to be kind to yourselves today. Take care.
That's it for today's episode of Grief is the New Normal. If this conversation resonated with you or you think it might benefit someone else, please share it. Sharing can open doors to healing, understanding, and normalizing these griefy conversations. If you're craving deeper insights or ongoing support, consider signing up for the Grief Gap newsletter. It's packed with resources, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate your grief journey. Visit the website www.griefisthenewnormal.com to subscribe. For those who prefer a more personal touch to their healing process, check out my grief journal, Authentically Unapologetic. It's designed to help you explore your grief on your own terms with prompts and exercises that encourage reflection and growth. I'm Dr. Heather Taylor, and I look forward to our next meaningful conversation. Our soothing tunes are provided by the Datacorns. If you're interested in sharing your story, collaborating, or learning more, please email me at hello@griefisthenewnormal.com. You can also stream the episodes on YouTube for more engaging content. Until next time, keep exploring your grief with intention and support, remembering you don't have to do this alone.